You might have, like me, been on Instagram and you follow some accounts and you see that, oh, they're promoting products. And maybe you wonder briefly, how much experience do they really have with these products? How much do they know about that flat tummy tea? What if you found out that they literally can't experience the products because they're not real people? That's where we turn to sort of Black Mirror filter laid over our social media world. And joining us now to break this down, writer of an awesome article, reporter for the Huffington Post, Jessalyn Cook, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Glad to have you here, very much enjoyed your article. So we're talking about artificial influencers. Tell me a little bit about what this looks like.
Well, they look a lot like people. They're popping up all over Instagram, and these influencers, they're computer generated. They're either created by brands themselves or by digital marketing agencies that let different brands use them to promote their products or services.
So how realistic are these in general? Like if someone is just sort of going about their day, are they going to, well, we're seeing some there. Like are they generally labeled as being artificial? Is the nature of how artificial they are made clear? And in general, how good is this technology getting visually?
Well, it ranges a bit. Michaela, who we just saw on the screen, you can tell that she looks like kind of like an avatar from a video game, but some of them look very realistic, and that's intentional by design, and very few of them disclose that they're computer generated and not real people, and go to great lengths to seem human-like and engage with their audiences.
Yeah, that sexy colonel that we showed looks, now that's literally what his name is. I'm not just like, it's not a value judgment, although clearly he's a very sexy CGI creation. I can't tell the difference between that and a real person. I think he looks 100% real. So where did this come from? Why is it, like instead of just having an actor pose for photos for KFC, why would they create a digital mascot like the sexy colonel? What are some of the advantages to that?
I think for KFC, it was just a marketing gimmick that was supposed to be kind of funny. But for a lot of brands, digital influencers, virtual influencers appeal to them for brand safety reasons. With a human influencer who endorses your brand, there's a risk that the next week they're going to be outed as a racist or they're going to do something scandalous. Whereas with CGI influencers, brands and marketing agencies have full control over what they do and what they say.
So this is really interesting. So I totally agree with you. You never know what some of these influencers are gonna end up doing or saying, and the track record in the past has been pretty bad for a lot of them. Generally, they end up saying something really inappropriate. But you also want your brand mascot to be real, like to seem like a human. And so in the case of Michaela, she has 1.9 million followers. She talks to them about being bullied, drama with her friends, her dating life, and even being sexually assaulted, despite the fact that she is not a real thing that can be sexually assaulted. So in this sort of quest to be real, could they potentially cross the line in the same way that a human influencer could?
Yeah, absolutely. That instance with Michaela definitely crossed the line. Brud, which is the company that runs Michaela, they took down the video of her talking about her sexual assault right away after there was some backlash. But it's certainly less likely that you're going to be dealing with something like that with a virtual influencer than with a human.
Yeah. So what I'm curious about is, like, so I sort of get how you might want to, if you want to have an account that's really popular and you don't think that you yourself can do it, maybe you're not super photogenic or something, maybe you create this avatar, create a life. It's kind of like a piece of living art or something like that. For the purposes of these companies though, where they're gonna be promoting products, there are legal regulations that these might or already are running afoul of, right?
Right. So influencer marketing is becoming really big. It was valued at $8 billion last year, and it's expected to hit by 2022, it's going to be $15 billion. And so the FTC has started to pay a little more attention to influencer marketing. They haven't rolled out any specific policies to deal with the transparency issues posed by CGI influencers just yet, but there is a rule saying that if you are going to endorse a product, you can't talk about it if you haven't actually used it. And with CGI influencers, of course, they can't try anything because they're not real. Yeah,
at best case scenario, the sexy colonel can try digital chicken, but that's probably as far as it goes. So I did have another question though, because in your article you talk about some proposed legislation that might help in this situation. And one area is making sure that in the same way that sponsored posts are supposed to be clearly labeled, that if you are a digital avatar, that needs to be made apparent in the post, correct?
Yeah, so A firm called Fullscreen did a study last year, and they found that 42% of millennials and Gen Zers have actually followed a CGI account without realizing that it's computer generated. And that's where it gets really complicated with deceptive advertising. If you see the sexy Colonel or Michaela promoting a product saying how much they love it, and you don't realize that they're not real and they've never used that product, that may influence how you spend your money. So some experts, Truth in Advertising, which is an advertising watchdog organization, they are pushing for disclosure of the fact that these influencers are not real.
Jess, it's JR. So the same way, whenever you have the advent of all this technology and things change, like the way we had Uber and Lyft and all those things, and taxi drivers, traditional taxi drivers were upset because their jobs were getting taken away. Have you noticed, or has there been a pushback from real life, living, breathing influencers maybe losing some revenue because the opportunities are getting maybe taken away by things like this? Have they had any pushback on that yet? Because that's kind of like a livelihood for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to think that even influencers may not be immune from automation taking over people's jobs. I haven't seen any pushback yet, but with the way this trend is growing and based on how popular these CGI influencers are becoming and how many brand deals they're getting, I could certainly see that becoming an issue.
Yeah, and I was talking with my producers before this, and one of the proposed pieces of legislation involved, if you are computer generated, then you would have to identify it. And there are these interesting edge cases where I believe, Michaela, I could be wrong, initially the photographs are of a person, but the face is digitally added afterward. And so that hypothetically would be computer generated, even though most of the image is real, but almost everyone's photos have some sort of digital manipulation, from filters to colors being changed to figure outlines being changed to dog ears being added. How it seems like it would be a difficult thing to adjudicate.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be very complicated and messy, and I think that's why agencies like TINA, organizations like TINA, are hoping that the FTC will step in soon with some specific rules to say what is okay and what is not, and also how to disclose if an influencer is computer generated, whether that's acceptable to do that through a hashtag virtual influencer, or whether it needs to be more explicit. We just don't know yet.
Yeah, well, Jessalyn, we appreciate, as always, you joining us. Great work there at the Huffington Post.
Thanks, John.
And I just want to finally add, I've had conversations with my wife, who is an actress, so she hates these conversations. But in the same way that, like, if you're gonna give like advertising stuff to an influencer, you'd prefer it with someone who you have a team of social media interns that are that person. Like artificial actors and actresses in the future, why would you want to have someone who could be a diva or might want more money for the next movie? Like, I have a feeling that you're going to be seeing personalities, digital avatars, not the character in a movie, but someone who is playing the character that can be in multiple movies and shows. Maybe they can't do that quite yet, but I think that in the same way that now we're talking about Sexy Colonel, I think that like the star of Fast and Furious 17 is not gonna be a flesh and blood human.
Well, yeah, everyone's gonna be voiceover actors now instead of real life actors.
Until eventually they can replace that too. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.